Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell, for his usual Wednesday visit. Welcome in, Bax. We are going to have some fun on today's show out there, Bucknutters. Bax and I are going to rank the top 12 players on Ohio State's 2019 football roster in order. Bax and I each came up with our own lists, and we compared and contrasted those lists. Our lists were very similar, but did have a few minor disagreements. We eventually reached a final consensus on the top 12, which we are about to present to you. We're going to go in reverse order from number 12 to number 1 and say something about each player. And for the listeners out there, please give us your top 12 in the comment section on Bucknuts. And if you're listening on iTunes and you dig the show, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps. All right, let's get down to business, Bax. Number 12 on our list is sophomore defensive end Tyreek Smith, who isn't even projected to be a starter. That's how loaded this D-line is. But we like him more than Jonathan Cooper, who I'll just give a spoiler, is not on our top 12 list, did not make this list. So we like Tyreek Smith more than the projected starter. What stands out about Tyreek Smith to you, Bax?
Well, what stands out to me about Tyreek Smith is, A, he's playing opposite a top 10 pick on the other side of the football. So that can tell you there's not going to be any double teams in this young man. And last year, he played very well over the course of the year. As the season went on, he got on the field more. He was a more impactful player. He's one of those guys that coming out of last year, I think everybody felt was a rising star. And so I pushed him to be on this list because I feel like he's going to eventually take over the majority of the snaps opposite Chase Young, who, spoiler alert, is higher on the list. Duh. And I think he's going to end up being, by the end of the year, one of these guys who's going to be really good. So for me, I think Tyreek Smith might be a surprise to some people. At the end of the year, you're going to look back and go, wow, we might not have him high enough.
Number 11 on the list, third-year sophomore, defensive back Shaun Wade. I call him defensive back because he can play corner. He's probably going to be the starting nickel. He can play safety. He can do it all. And I think I thought he played well last year as a redshirt freshman, led the team in interceptions, and I think he's another guy we might look at and say, man, we should have had him higher than 11th. What stands out about Shaun Wade, Bax?
Well, you just tapped on it. Shaun Wade's a guy who could start at like 3 different positions this year for the Buckeyes. There's been a lot of talk about Brendan White, who's been moving to the bullet position, who's going to be the other safety next to Jordan Fuller, if they're going to have White in a bit of a different role. Guess what? Shaun Wade's a guy, I think last year, for a good portion of the year, you could have argued was the best cover corner OSU had. And they were putting him at safety because they were trying to do what they could to get the defense to just stop anyone. But I think over the course of this summer, with him developing, he could turn into be a guy who is the number 2 corner. He could be a guy who is essentially the starting safety next to Jordan Fuller. Spoiler alert, another guy higher on the list. And his ability to just play multiple positions, play at a level, is what kind of gets him here. This is a potential pick. Because let's not forget, Shaun Wade was a top 1 or 2 corner in the country coming to OSU. And he's played well, but not spectacular so far in his career. So this should be the kind of year where he has that breakout season that we've seen cornerbacks have at OSU in the past. And a lot of us think there's probably a corner on this list who's going to have that breakout season, and we'll get to him. But Shaun Wade's a guy who, again, much like Tyreek Smith, if we do this list in January of 2020, we may say, how do we not have him as a top 10 guy?
We only have one offensive lineman on the list, and people are going to be surprised who it is, I think. We both we did our list blind, and I didn't know who you were picking, you didn't know who I was picking. We only had one offensive lineman, Josh Myers. Why is Josh Myers we have a number 10. Why is Josh Myers one of the top 10 players on this team, Bax?
Well, first of all, he plays the most critical position on the offensive line, which is the center, which tells you that he has to be the one making the calls, making sure everybody's lined up. But I think more importantly, this is a guy who we've felt has been ready to go for most of last season. And at a position like the offensive line with a new starting quarterback behind you, you have to have a strong group up front. And he showed over the course of the spring that he's taking this job he's taking the bull by the horns here. And I think a lot of people would have thought that perhaps Thayer Munford would have been the pick if you're going to pick one offensive lineman being on the top 12 list for Ohio State. But I think Myers is absolutely critical to this year's team. I think he's a guy who is on the verge of having 2 very good years in a row as the starting center for Ohio State. He's going to put Ohio State back in the Remington discussion. And quite frankly, I think Josh Myers is on the verge of breaking out as one of the best offensive linemen in all of college football. And again, people may be surprised now, and then after the end of the year, they're going to go, yeah, Josh Myers is absolutely a top 10 player. I think he's also, in terms of importance, he's more than top 10. He may be top 5 most important that he has a great year this year. But in terms of best players, I think 10 is probably a good spot to put him right now.
And I will say there were 3 other offensive linemen that barely made, that I strongly consider that, barely missed the list. Obviously Thayer Munford, the one returning starter, he didn't grade out all that well according to Pro Football Focus. I know some people on our site are not big Pro Football Focus fans, but tell you what, I hear ESPN citing them all the time on their NFL stuff. And, Thayer Munford, I think he could prove to be definitely one of the top 10 players on this team. Jonah Jackson's another guy that I consider the Rutgers transfer. And if Brandon Bowen can stay healthy, certainly he could be up there. So we'll look back. But I'm with you. I think Myers, for those that don't know, Ryan Day told us at the Rose Bowl, and they thought at that time that Michael Jordan was going to come back. That's the vibe that I got. They thought that Michael Jordan was leaning toward coming back. And Ryan Day told us all in the media, he was like, the plan is for next year for Josh Myers. If Mike comes back, Mike's going to move back to guard, and Josh Myers is going to be the starting center. The light really came on for him, during practice in 2018. So there you go with Josh Myers. Number 9 on our list, guy I lobbied for a little more than you did, just like you lobbied a little bit more for Myers than I did, but Austin Mack. I think he's going to be one of these guys that we kind of think, maybe, and I know he was hurt last year, so it's a little unfair to say this, but I'll say it anyway. There's been a little bit of a disappointment just because he came in with such high accolades, but we've seen it so many times. And I'm not saying he's the same type of player as Devin Smith, but we see it all the time when somehow the light just goes on for a kid as a senior. And I thought the light was coming on for him last year, Bax, before that injury. And who knows how he would have finished the season. That Purdue game was like rock bottom. It was the only loss of the season, and they finished the season so well. I think Austin Mack really would have had a good finish to the season last year. So Austin Mack's a guy I lobbied for. I talked a lot about him there. Tell the listeners a little bit about what you think of Austin Mack.
Well, yeah, I had out of my top 10, which is how we combined to make our top 12 here, because you were very high on Austin Mack. But that's not a knock on him from my point of view. I think he's an excellent player. And I think that Purdue game was just the absolute nadir of last season. Think about it if you're Austin Mack. You're from Indiana. You go to Ohio State. You're having a very good season with maybe the best quarterback in America throwing you the ball. And then you lose by 3 touchdowns in your home state and your season ends due to injury. That has to be so frustrating for him. But he's a guy who, you nailed it. He has shown flashes of being a great all-around receiver, right? He's shown flashes of being consistently that guy who is going to be open and make the critical catch. And when you look at this year's receiving group, there's one other guy who's a little higher on this list that we both thought was a no-brainer. But after that, you've got, Chris Olave, you've got Ben Victor, you've got guys who are younger or aren't as consistent, right? You got Garrett Wilson. You've got some good young players. Austin Mack is a critical player for Ohio State because if Ryan Day is still going to follow the philosophy of you want to be able to play at least 6 receivers, then you have to have a couple of the big-time guys to rely on. Well, then Austin Mack has to be a, quote, big-time guy, especially with the losses at the position. So there's a lot of opportunity here. And, again, Austin Mack could be one of those breakout guys where we know he's very good, and he develops a bit of a rapport with Justin Fields, who, spoiler alert, is certainly on this list. And Mack could go out and have a very strong year just because of the change at the position and the more playing time available. He certainly has the ability to.
Quit giving spoilers. I wanted people to think maybe we left Justin Fields off the list. No more spoilers. And by the way, I'm going to take everybody behind the curtain here. If Joshua Perry's favorite song is "Return of the Mac," and that's why we lead off the Joshua Perry song with the 90s track "Return of the Mac." And it's a good tune. And how many times are we going to hear if Austin Mack has a good year this year, especially with him coming off the injury, "Return of the Mac"? Jay Perry will like that. All right, next on our list, our top 8 were so similar, it was crazy. All right, number 8 on the list, B.B. Landers. This D-line is so loaded. I love B.B. Landers. I don't know how he's going to play in the NFL. And we left Devon Hamilton off, but that was another tough one to leave off. He's a guy that might translate better to the NFL, and I think Devon Hamilton's going to be really, really, really good. He barely missed this list, but B.B. Landers, man, I think is going to be really good as a fifth-year senior. He was banged up for pretty much all of last year and just fought through it, missed a couple games. He's just a bull in there, man. His that low center of gravity, and he always gets such good push. He's so quick, kind of like a Geno Atkins type player, for the Bengals. I'm not saying he's that good, but I really like B.B. Landers there at number 8 backs.
Yeah, I agree with you. The comparison you made was Geno Atkins from the Bengals. That's a good one. I'll give you another college comparison. Nick Fairley when he was at Auburn. There's another player that B.B. Landers reminds me of. And I think Landers is he's so quick off the ball. And he's the leader of this defensive tackle group, the Crush Men, I think B.B. Landers could have easily been higher, frankly. I think he always is going to get slightly, I don't want to say forgotten, or maybe not given as much credit just because he doesn't have a 6'3", 320-pound frame at the position he plays. But he is absolutely this year's disruptor in the middle. The role that we saw Draymond Jones last year of being always in the backfield could easily be B.B. Landers this year. And, from a NFL point of view, look, we're not picking the top 10 NFL prospects on OSU's roster. We're picking the top, 12 because you know how we always go longer than we should. We're picking the top 12 guys on next year's OSU team. And B.B. Landers, without a shadow of a doubt, is on that list. He's a guy who I also think, and this is a whole different show topic, he's such a critical player and such a well-respected player, he could be a captain next year.
It's amazing thinking about some of the players that didn't make this list that I think are going to have huge seasons. Like Tommy Togiai is another guy. He's the strongest guy on the team. I think he'll be the first D tackle off the bench, so to speak. Although they're going to have a bunch of guys that are going to rotate in there. Haskell Garrett, obviously Teron Vincent's going to rotate in there. I thought Antoine Jackson had a solid spring, but right now he's a third teamer. I mean, that's just how loaded they are. Tommy Togiai is another guy that's not on this list, but I think he's going to have a big year. All right, next guy on the list. I love this guy. He really came on at the end of last year. I think he's going to flourish as a senior. Outside linebacker Malik Harrison, number 7 on our list, backs.
Yeah, and Harrison's a guy I strongly considered putting a lot higher because, let's face it, what's going to happen when he's actually getting good coaching at the position for a year? There's a guy who was thriving in a situation where literally no other linebacker thrived last year. And he's one of those guys who, we mentioned Josh Perry. He could have a Josh Perry kind of year this year. I honestly think that Harrison is going to be one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten, if not the country. And, this is a guy who easily could be, if we do this list at the end of the year, we may easily turn around and go, well, we had him easily the worst compared to what he actually finished on the list, because I think you're going to see a quantum leap defensively. And I think that you're going to see the linebackers play at such a higher level that the improvement of everyone around him is going to make Malik Harrison just look that much better, because then he's only going to have to do his job. And he's a guy who already can do his job alone very well. This is the best linebacker on the football team.
Number 6 on our list, the aforementioned quarterback Justin Fields. Before he has ever thrown a pass for the Buckeyes, we're putting him as the 6th best player on the team. The hype train is already out of control, and we're the conductors. What do you think, Bax?
Well, I don't know how you don't put him on the list. And you could easily justify putting him at 10. You could easily justify putting him at 1. And if we were doing this list of saying the most important Buckeye this year, there's no question it would be Justin Fields. Because if Justin Fields doesn't develop the way we all think he's going to, then it could hurt the season. He's the one who's going to be directly responsible for whether this is a 9-win team or a 12-win team. And look, this guy has the physical abilities. That's never been a question. This is a guy who was closely compared to Trevor Lawrence coming out of high school. And this is a guy who's going to be trained and taught by Ryan Day for the better part of a year before he steps on the field. So he's going to be well prepared to be the most successful quarterback possible. I think at the end of the day, we both think, and I don't want to speak for you, but we both think he's going to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten over the course of the season. And look, if he's the best quarterback in the Big Ten with a bullet, then this is going to seem too low. But this is the guy who could have easily been the most mobile on this list for sure.
I do think Adrian Martinez is going to be right up there. I really do, especially playing in that Scott Frost offense. I mean, although Justin Fields gets to play in the Ryan Day offense, Mike Yurcich offense, Kevin, quote-unquote, Ron Wilson offense. So, yeah, I like Justin Fields a lot, but we'll see. If I had to bet, I think Adrian Martinez is going to end up putting up the better year, but we shall see. Having that year of experience is really going to help Martinez. I really like him. But I like Fields a lot, too. I think and having this, I really like this receiving core, but we'll talk about that on a different day. Number 5 on our list. This is a guy that I'm a little higher on than you are, but I am not. He's got to play a lot better than he did last year. J.K. Dobbins, running back. We have him number 5 on the list. Again, I'm a little higher on him than you are. We averaged that out. I think you had him 6th and I had him 4th. So he is 5th on the list. J.K. Dobbins, backs.
Yeah, it's not a knock on J.K. Dobbins, but we saw at times last year he had difficulty getting, quote, hard yards, right? Nobody questioned his agility or his speed or his ability to produce. He's a great running back. But he's the lightning, and he needs some thunder opposite him. And, we saw at times last year, remember when the running game wasn't going well? Mike Weber was a little hobbled or having trouble holding onto the ball before his run down the last couple games where he was just exceptional. I'd argue at the end of the year, Mike Weber was the better of the 2 running backs. So Dobbins still has something to prove. We all knew from the moment he got to campus what his abilities were, and the things that he does well, he does really well. But if you're going to rely on him to take 3/4 of the snaps, then there's certain things he's got to improve on this offseason. So that's why I had him a little lower than you. But there's still no question that J.K. Dobbins is one of the biggest threats in college football with the ball in his hands. So, this is a guy who's critical for OSU this year to be able to show that he can run inside the tackles and not just be able to juke people, get to the outside. And by the way, he's one of the best pass-catching tailbacks in the country. So this is a great player who, if he can take that next step, is going to really be able to push this OSU offense forward, especially with a young quarterback like Fields still getting his feet wet.
Pretty cool stat here. If J.K. Dobbins rushes for 1,000 yards or more this year, which he will if he stays healthy, spoiler alert, he will join someone named Archie Griffin as the only running back or any player in Ohio State history to rush for 1,000 yards or more in 3 separate seasons. So he will join Archie Griffin. Pretty good company there. All right, number 4 on our list is safety Jordan Fuller. It's great having him back. He's an excellent player, and he's a returning captain. I mean, that's a nice luxury to have a returning captain, a 2-year captain coming back. So, they have another returning captain in Tuff Borland who's not on this list, but is clearly an excellent leader. Jordan Fuller, number 4 on our list, Mr. Baxendell.
Yeah, I was super excited he came back because even though he didn't quite have the year I think he would have expected last year, I still thought for sure he was gone. I figured he was a top 3-round pick. So his grade must have came back a little lower than he hoped for. And to me, this is a gift for this OSU defense that's working on improving after a bad year last year. This is an NFL safety on the team. This is a guy who maybe wouldn't start on an NFL roster this year, but could have the ability to do so in the not-so-distant future had he gone out this year. He was probably a mid-round pick. So Jordan Fuller I would argue, one of the top 5 safeties in America. And we have him 4th on this list. So that tells you how loaded the top group here is, that he's not even the top defensive back. But I think he's a very good player. He's obviously going to be a captain again. His leadership's certainly something we can't overlook when you have a team that's trying to make such a quantum change from last year. But Jordan Fuller is just flat out a great football player, and Ohio State's extremely lucky to have him back this year.
Number 3 on the list, corner, Jeffrey Okudah. My gosh, did he play great in the Rose Bowl, and the light just came on for him. I don't want to say the light came on. Even as a true freshman, he played really well. He played, during the Urban Meyer era, he played more snaps than any other true freshman corner. And they've had a lot of, they had a lot of good, this isn't even a spoiler, going back, they had a lot of good corners, a lot of good first-round corners coming through there, like Marshawn Lattimore and Denzel Ward, Eli Apple, Garyon Conley, and the one that played the most as a true freshman was Jeffrey Okudah. Then he continued to, he became a starter last year, played really well. I think he's going to have a tremendous year as a junior. I think he's going to be a first-round draft pick. He's going to leave after this season. Jeffrey Okudah, number 3 on our list, backs.
Yeah, you just said pretty much everything I was going to say. This guy, the last couple games, the way he played, he was already good enough that we would have had him in the top 10, but he took another step. And this is a guy who is going to be the next first-round corner from Ohio State. He's the guy who, you just mentioned all these cornerbacks who have taken that step for OSU during the Meyer era. He's going to be the man at corner. And he's going to be the guy that we're going to start thanking teams for throwing the ball at. I vividly remember with Denzel Ward a couple years ago, we were like, oh, those idiots threw it at Ward again. Thank you. That helps us. Okudah's going to be that guy this year. He's an absolute elite cover corner. And like you said, I don't think he's here after this year. I think he's a surefire first-round pick in next year's draft.
Yep, and I won't be surprised if he ends up being like a top 10 pick. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got that dog in him. He's got everything you want in a corner. I think he's going to have a huge year. Number 2 on our list, another guy that I'm just like Jordan Fuller. I'm thrilled he came back, and I was a little bit, pleasantly surprised that he came back. Wide receiver KJ Hill. Not that I thought he'd be a top pick. I thought he'd be a third-day pick, meaning rounds 4 through 7, and probably closer to 7 than 4. But some guys are just done with school, and I thought as a fourth-year junior he might just be done. This is huge getting him back as a fifth-year senior. He's a guy, if he stays healthy, he's going to blow past David Boston's school record for career receptions. David Boston has 191, KJ Hill sitting there like 155, and he's going to blow past that. Now, Boston only played 3 years where Hill's going to play 4 years, but man, best hands on the team, KJ Hill number 2 on our list.
Yeah, and KJ Hill, I think somebody pointed out to him, hey, look what Jalen Marshall's doing right now. How do you think it went for Jalen Marshall when he was projected to be a third-day pick, didn't get picked at all, made a little bit of an impact in the league, but there wasn't the whole pressure of keeping him in because he was a pick that he had to look good with, and now he bounced around the AAF and isn't even in the league anymore. Another year for Jalen Marshall at OSU when he left early probably would have helped him a lot at the next level. I think KJ Hill wanted to go. I really think he did. I don't think KJ Hill wanted to come back. But I think KJ Hill looked at the reality of it and said, man, if I can improve XYZ the next year and make myself a top 3 pick, get me into the 3rd round or something, right? Then he's going to be in a spot where his career will set him up to be a more impactful player. And that's just a blessing for OSU because this guy is insanely good. We all know that the catch he had last year where his celebration was trying to shake the ball off his hand like it was glued, right? And this is one of the best receivers in college football. Whatever you think about his NFL prospects, it's kind of like B.B. Landers. It doesn't really matter for this discussion because in the terms of a college football receiver, KJ Hill is as good as it gets practically. He's not 6'5" with, runs a 4.3 40, but the guy is always going to catch the ball. I think he's going to be a favorite for Fields to look at right away. KJ Hill is, we're just so lucky again to have him back. That this is a guy who I think is going to easily be one of the critical leaders on this year's team, not just because of the fact that he's a veteran, but just because of how darn good he is.
Number 1 with a bullet on our list, a silver bullet, defensive end Chase Young. I think we're going to be talking about him as a top 5 pick in next year's draft, and hopefully he's locked in and isn't making business decisions this year because he seems like he wants to. Talking to him in spring, Chase Young seems like he has a desire to dominate college football this year, and if he wants to, he will. He is that good, and he keeps getting better and better, and now he's going to get more and more snaps. Even though they're loaded there at defensive end, he's going to get a lot more chances this year. Chase Young on a team loaded with talent, number 1 on our list, Bax.
Well, yeah, you can't keep the predator off the field. Let's be honest. I think we're all a little worried about the business decision thing just because of what happened to Nick Bosa last year. And let's be honest, folks, that's a circumstances thing. Nick Bosa was maybe even more obvious of a top 5 pick at this point in time last year than Chase Young is this year, but it's not that big of a difference. The difference is that Nick Bosa had that injury that was nagging at him even before he got hurt and suffered a clear season-ending injury. So, in the end, I know we all would have loved to have had Nick Bosa back for the Michigan game or whatever, but it just didn't happen. Look, the guy went out on the draft stage with OSU inside of his coat. So let's not be that upset with Nick Bosa, and let's not project that concern onto Chase Young. I think Chase Young recognizes last year he sort of got thrown into the role as number 1 guy, had a great year, but this is his year where everybody's going to be talking about Chase Young. It's not going to be like, oh, look, Chase Young's a really good young player. It's Chase Young's one of the best players in America. And I agree with you. I think he's a top 5 NFL pick next year. And next year's draft isn't going to be like this year's draft where it seemed like it was all defensive ends that were coming out and you could have picked one of 6 of them and you'd be in really good shape. Chase Young's a guy who's going to position himself to be the top non-cornerback pick next year. The first pick's always a quarterback, right? So I think he's the best defensive player in the Big Ten, maybe the country. He's a player who is, hey, guess what? He's going to face a bunch of double teams this year. But he's already shown he could beat them last year. There were times last year where he made critical plays. Let's not forget the Penn State game, right? So, this is the best player on the football team. I don't think anybody debates that right now. You have potential for other guys to come up to his level, But right now, he's number one, and he's number one with a silver bullet.
Wow. All right, we can take a breath now and come up for air. That was a lot of fun. Again, give us your comments, agree or disagree. I'm sure there'll be a lot of disagreements, and that's fine. This was a fun exercise, a lot of fun on the show here. Thank you very much to the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear the Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.